About an hour with Josh Centers on iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, Part 1. This is Mac Voices. Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by Kolide. Kolide is a fleet visibility solution for Mac, Windows, and Linux that can help you securely scale your business. Learn more at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to a special Mac Voices Take Control Books event. I'm Chuck Joyner. We are live on YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV with Mr. Josh Centers, the author of Take Control of iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 from Take Control Books. We're going to spend about an hour talking about both of those operating systems and taking the questions from the chat room at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. So if you're in the chat room now, welcome. It's great to see you, and thanks for being here. And if not, we're going to hopefully do more of these live events so that you can talk to, well, virtually through chat, the Take Control authors, instead of having them talk about what they want to talk about and what I want to talk about. We want to talk about what you want to talk about, what the problems that you are experiencing are, and how maybe we can help. So Josh, welcome. It's great to see you, and thanks so much for being the first out of the gate to test this out.
Hey, always happy to be the guinea pig. I mean, that's how I got into this gig. This is the 8th iOS book I've done. I started with iOS 8, and so I've been a guinea pig every summer for many years now. So where should we begin other than agree on the 2 a.m. Waffle House? So other than Waffle House, which I mean, I look, it's y'all's time in my book. We can talk about literally anything you want, but I do have the iOS stuff here, and if there's anything I can demonstrate or help you with, I'll actually will pull a call out on Twitter real quick,
okay,
to let my many dozens of followers know.
Well, Josh, I'll tell you what, I think let's start at the most basic thing. I was surprised a little bit earlier this week. I was talking with some friends, and I was kind of shocked at the number of them that had not done the upgrade yet. And these are people that are tech savvy, so that made it somewhat surprising. And of course, Apple always takes so much pride in within a week, 2 weeks, they have such a high percentage of folks who are on the new operating system. So the question is, should we do the upgrades to iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, or is there a reason we should not?
Wait till you're comfortable. Don't wait too long, or you're going to have problems. Adam Hicks addressed this a few years ago in Tidbits, because we had people who, until like 2016, 2017, we had people staying on Snow Leopard, and they're my stuff isn't working on Snow Leopard, and like, yeah, because you're using an ancient operating system. And then they'd finally update, and of course all hell broke loose. I had a similar experience when I finally upgraded. I got so many Mac OS versions now I can't keep track. What was the last one that supported 32-bit apps? It was High Sierra. Like I waited a couple of versions, and that update was a mess. So like you have a year, right now we're on 16.1. You might could wait, for another point update. But yeah, now anywhere between now and the holiday season, maybe wait till you have a little time off. It's a good time to update. But yeah, is it stable? Yeah. And it has been stable. Apple made a change a few years ago, and I always feel bad about this because, you'll ask me about the betas, Chuck, and I'll say, yeah, they're good, but admittedly, my idea of good is completely warped from years of delving in the coal mines of buggy Apple software. Like if my phone boots and it consistently stays in the correct orientation with not like turn upside down or something goofy like that, I'm like, it's pretty stable. But since I want to say it was iOS 13, that was kind of a disaster. When it was released, Apple just didn't do a good job of testing it. And I guess us beta testers didn't do a good job either. Apple made a lot of changes. One of those was the public beta, so we have more people testing them out. And I've just noticed since the debacle that was iOS 13, because the very first beta of iOS 13 wouldn't boot. It was that bad. And that was par for the course. You always at least wait until beta 2, right? Developer beta 2. And Um, okay. So anyway, I will get to that question. Anyway, my point being, since iOS, I want to say 14, the betas have been very stable, and as a result, the final operating system has been very stable. As for why people aren't updating, honestly, I don't think the features are all that compelling for most people. I think now book sales have been excellent, and I think it's because people are kind of confounded by some of this stuff. And it's really just that simple. I did a poll recently on Twitter because I was just curious. I'm like, would you rather have at this stage? I don't even specify Apple, just in general. Would you do you want more features? Do you want the features that are there to work? And like 83, 87%, an enormous percentage of people said we want the existing features to work. And one of my frustrations with all these operating systems, and it's not just Apple. I mean, this is true in Windows and Android land too. Like they keep coming with all these new features that I'm not sure people want. I think people have enough features, but things just are breaking. Things that used to work don't work. We had I can't remember his name off the top of my head. David, was it David Shayer? I think it was. He was a former developer at Apple, and he wrote some articles for Tidbits about how they didn't fix old bugs. Like if a bug was in like one version of Mac OS and then they went to the next version and it hadn't gotten fixed, it just wasn't going to get fixed. And so these have accrued over time. So, as much as, I like the, having a new book to put out every year, I wish I would just take a year or two and just polish things. But yeah, it's fine. One thing I will mention stability-wise is HomeKit is kind of a mess. And the reason HomeKit is a mess is because they had to rewrite the Home app from scratch. And so they rewrote it from scratch to support this thing called Matter. Matter is a big conglomeration, amalgamation, partnership between all the big tech companies, all the big home automation companies. In theory, it makes all the home automation stuff work across ecosystems, right? So in theory, communism works, but in theory, you could buy a Google Nest or you can buy an Amazon Ring or whatever, and those will work with, excellent point, Michael. I'll get to that. But those, in theory, those can all work with like HomeKit or like your HomeKit devices can work with Google Home. That's the theory. So they had to rewrite to implement that. And apparently, and this is something I did not realize when I first came out with the book. There's in 16.2, Apple's already pre-announced this because Apple said, yeah, okay, we're sorry. It's really unstable right now. They're coming out with a new back end for Home. And that is supposed to fix a lot of things. The catch is it's only going to work with that generation of updates, like 16.2 and whatever the Mac OS version is, etc. As far as I know, it will not work backwards. So it's going to be those things like if you update to iOS 16, you have home automations. Things are going to be flaky for a while until you can get everything moved up to those current versions and then install that backend. It's kind of like a few years ago when they redid the reminders backend to add a bunch of new features. But everything had to be on the same update cycle. So a few things I want to address here in the comments real quick. Yeah, Michael has an excellent point. Apple Books, they completely reworked it, and this is a pattern in a lot of the stuff in iOS 16 is that there are a lot of things they've just totally reworked, and they didn't think through all the way. Books is one of those. It's kind of grown on me, but yeah, Michael and some other Tidbits readers have had problems with the Books app. So if you're a big Books app person, that would be an issue. And also, I want to thank everyone in the chat who's saying lovely things about Take Control. Michael also has some good advice. If there's a new feature, it's compelling, update. Otherwise, stick with you can stick with iOS 15, iPadOS 15, because Apple is updating those old operating systems with security updates. So you get the security updates. They don't force you. And that's probably another reason while the updates are slow, Apple's backed off. Because it used to be they just, okay, here's the new operating system. You're going to download it. It's going to take up storage. Install it or don't. But It's going to take up storage until you do. Apple has gotten less aggressive about pushing them. They've gotten better about updating the older version if you don't want to be pushed to update, which I think is excellent policy, especially as they rework things. So that's a very long-winded answer to that question. But the main pain points I would say are home and books, and you can wait if you want to. Just don't wait too long. I would, at the latest, I would wait till May. Be updated, and then have it up to date over the summer, and then you're ready for whatever's next.
Josh, a couple of things that I want to follow up on. The first one is the obvious security questions or issues, because Apple seems to be, as they release 16.1, they go back and they are not signing older versions. And we've heard that there is or was a 0-day exploit that was fixed. I think it was 16.0. May have been 16.1. But the point is that, security is one of the big reasons I think we all, when we encourage updates, is one of the reasons we encourage updates. Is that a reason, in spite of the issue with the books and the HomeKit, one of them is inconvenient, the other's dangerous.
Right. No, like I said, Apple is still updating iOS 15. You can, if you want to, you can update to, they released it on the 28th, iOS 15.7.1 and iPadOS 15.7.1. So I believe you get the option to install one or the other. So you can update to that. And now they updated it slower. They didn't update it as quickly as they updated. I think it was about a week after, maybe longer than a week after. But yeah, and these security issues they're fixing are extremely severe. It's stuff like in the Apple Neural Engine, a malicious website could steal your information. A malicious Wi-Fi network could initiate a denial of service attack. Some pretty serious stuff. And on a side note, I've noticed that the Apple security updates have gotten a lot more severe recently, and I'm not sure if that's because things are getting worse, either on Apple's end or the attacker's end or the general cybersecurity space, or if Apple's getting better at finding this stuff. Because Apple did recently release a new Apple security site. We did publish about that on Tidbits. Not really of interest to regular people, but for security enthusiasts and security researchers, they have a new Apple security research website. I can post that link in the chat. That's really interesting to check out if that's your thing. And the stuff they publish is really technical. So unless you're a serious enthusiast, it's not going to be all that interesting.
Go back to the books for just a second. You said that it was growing on you. So, and I am not familiar with whatever the issue is. So, is it an issue with performance, or is it an issue with appearance or interface? What's the issue with books?
My understanding is mostly the interface. Let me launch books and see if we can share that on the screen. Hopefully that'll come through clearly. All right. Let's see. We'll share our window. Are we seeing books now?
You seeing books? Looks good.
Okay, excellent. So I don't know, what should we read here? Nietzsche or Conan? Let's go with Conan, I guess. So like if you let me go back real quick. So like the basic like layout is the same, like the library, but you open a book and you're going to notice this is very very different than what you're used to if you're still on iOS 15 books. So like they hide the interface entirely. And if you tap the screen, you will see this little button down here, and you see some information, one page left in chapter, page 245 of 2,377. Wow. So you tap this, and now this is where all the controls are. Yes, that's one issue. Michael Cohen and some other readers have pointed that. Well, I mean, Michael's not just a reader, but other people have pointed out that it won't let you export the notes you make, which surely I hope that's an oversight, because if they're not going to let you export your notes, that's really incredibly lame. Let me look at that real quick, because I'm not sure I've tested this. So we're going to highlight this, and so that should add note. Okay, we can add a note too. Test note. Okay. So I have notes. All right, got our little note right there. Okay, so I tap but yeah, you can see this is very different. It tells me how deep I'm into contents. You can this little scrolly doodad on the right, you can touch and drag and navigate in the book. One thing that annoys me, it does not click to that line like tends to be the standard in Apple software. But the good thing is, if you scroll down too far, it gives me. If you look in the upper left, lets me go back to page 245. So I tap that and just go back. At least in theory, there we go. And so share. How would you even do this? Let's see. Yeah, I mean bookmarks and highlights. There we go. Highlights. Yeah, I don't see any option to share. So yeah, or export rather. So that's really unfortunate.
Were you able to, Josh, when you tapped it and brought the controls up, there was a share button down there on the bottom left.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
And that's what you brought up is
yeah,
what is it?
See.
What is it sharing?
So far, what it seems to share is just the title of the book. It's not even going to share the EPUB. And this is an EPUB from a project called Standard eBooks. We've written about it in tidbits before, but I will give them a quick plug if you want. So what Standard eBooks does, they take books from Project Gutenberg, classic books in the public domain, and they really pretty them up. They make nice fonts and all that stuff, and make it so it looks really nice on a Kindle. They fix the typos, or it looks nice on a Kindle or in Apple Books. And so if you're and they're all free. So if you're looking for really nicely formatted free ebooks, Standard ebooks is what you want to search for, and those will go right into Apple Books. But anyway, yeah. So I can't even share that. So there's some annoyances here. Let me show a few of the good things about it, though. So if you go into themes and settings, wrong thing. If you tap themes and settings, well, okay. You can see there are these preset themes now. So it used to be before you had to kind of manually change a background and all that. Now you can switch between all these different styles, at least in theory. We're just finding all the bugs tonight. Of course it is. It's taking long to load. Okay. So you can see it changed there.
Yeah.
I'm using an incredibly long book here, apparently. Original, extra crispy, Nashville hot. We have all the themes. Okay. I don't know what's going on with that, but like you can change the coloring real quick. You can go to like light, dark. You can change the font real quick. Yeah. So you can see there were some problems with books. So if anyone from Apple is watching this, please fix it, or please pester your coworkers on the books team. Options. Now, here's something really cool. If you go into options on this panel, you can choose pretty much any font you want. And there's a lot of choices here. Avenir, Iowan, never heard of that one, Publico. And there are also you can do bold text if you want all the text bolded. You can go down here under accessibility and hit customize, and you can actually change the line spacing, and you can change the character spacing and the word spacing, and just really mess up your book here. But tap options. Yeah, I think I did. I may be behind on the chat a little bit because right now I'm playing. But anyway, so just to show you what all you can do there. Yeah, just to show you what all you can do. So they have added more customization options. It's not all bad, but yeah, there are rough edges. And another thing I want to point out, because I had this problem, because when I first started using this new books, I kept creating bookmarks. I didn't know how that was happening. What was happening was I was scrolling, and then bookmark. I made a bookmark. So like I think they've improved this, but if you double tap the screen, it creates a bookmark, or you can also remove a bookmark that way. So if you're scrolling with your thumb, like just be very careful that you're not accidentally. It's not as sensitive as it used to be. So they fixed that, thankfully. So yeah, that's books. Does anyone have any other questions about books? Anything I can answer, or any other problems you've had that we can address?
Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by Kolide. Kolide is a fleet visibility solution for Mac, Windows, and Linux that can help you securely scale your business. The challenge with endpoint security has always been that it's difficult to scale, and when remote work took over, that challenge got exponentially harder. You need visibility into your fleet of devices in order to meet security goals and reduce service desk tickets. But how do you get that visibility when different parts of your company run on Mac, Windows, and Linux? You get Kolide. Kolide is an endpoint security solution that gives IT teams a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their operating system. Kolide gives you real-time access to your fleet's data and can do things that traditional MDMs can't. And instead of installing intrusive agents or locking down devices, Kolide takes a user-focused approach that communicates security recommendations to your employees directly on Slack. You can answer every question you have about your fleet without intruding on your workforce. Visit kolide.com/MacVoices to find out how. If you follow that link, they'll hook you up with a goodie bag just for activating a free trial. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices. Again, kolide.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for their support of Mac Voices. Circling back, because we sort of went down that rabbit hole, and then we'll go back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm DC Campfin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly or something close to it. He says he loves CopyClip on the Mac, and iPad doesn't have a built-in copy manager. Which third-party utility would you recommend for iPad to accomplish that?
I don't have one. I'm not a big clipboard manager guy. That's a concept that's never really clicked with me for some reason. So I'm afraid I don't have a good recommendation. But if anyone in the chat can recommend one, that would be great. I'm not even sure. They've added a lot of restrictions to copy and paste, so I don't know if that's even something you can do. I know there was used to be PasteBot. I'll look real quick and see if PasteBot's still a thing. That's from the same people that make from TapBots. They make TweetBot, which is I think I think looks like they killed that, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't really know of one. PasteBot was the main one I knew of. And as Michael pointed out, Apple made scrolling the default mode in books now instead of the page flip, and they got rid of the skeuomorphic page flip, which was nice, but I don't think anyone really is going to miss it too much. But all right, so what else should we talk about? iOS 16, or anything else? I'm down for anything. It's late. We can discuss anything.
Yeah, well, chat room, if you have questions or please throw them in there. Josh, how about if we jump over just for a second to iPadOS and ask the really dangerous question? Stage Manager.
Oh, Stage Manager. Okay, so I'm just going to give a disclaimer. I don't, at the moment, have an iPad that does Stage Manager, and that's because I'm cheap. But I have a, I think it was last year, I bought a brand new basic model iPad because a lot of things required the A12 Bionic, as I think what a lot of things in iOS or iPadOS 15 required. So updated that. And then this year, I debated whether I wanted to get at least an iPad Air to try to, have a test device for Stage Manager. And it just was not, for me, it wasn't worth the investment for writing a few paragraphs. So for coverage of Stage Manager, I begged, borrowed, and stole as much as I could to document that. This is what I'll say about Stage Manager. What I've seen, I'm not impressed. Just to be blunt, it has tons of rough edges. It's of questionable utility. Now, I've heard that I haven't tried Ventura yet. That's going to be an update soon, but I've heard the Ventura version is much better. What's interesting is Stage Manager was actually based on a feature I forget what it was called internally, but they developed this internally back in 2007. And there was a former Apple developer that blogged about it, and then he deleted the blog. So I guess he got in a little hot water with Apple. So Stage Manager is actually a very old feature, or a very old idea, at least, that they resurrected. But so the problem on the iPad, there's two problems. One is that there's just a lot of incoherent design elements, like the Apple hasn't polished all the rough edges out entirely. And then the other problem is that iPad apps aren't really designed to go into a window. And so there are a lot of third-party apps, even some first-party apps. You put them into a Stage Manager window and they do really weird things. They don't behave properly. So if you have an iPad, I haven't memorized the list. If you have an M1 iPad, or an M2 iPad, it for sure works. And I think they extended it back to a couple of generations of the iPad Pro. Feel free to try it out. It would probably be worth installing iPadOS 16.1 to try that. But I will tell you, if you've been considering, do I want to spend several $100s to get Stage Manager? Probably not, at least at this point. Save your money. So Michael had a question. He was on a Zoom call. His Mac repeatedly asked if you wanted to use the iPhone as a webcam. Interesting. iOS issue, Mac issue. That's one of those tricky things where it bridges between Ventura and iPhone 16. Or I'm sorry, iOS 16. And I don't know, it's probably just a bug. Like I said, I don't have Ventura, and my test machine's 2016 MacBook Pro. So I wasn't able to test Ventura as I usually do. Michael says he has so many things to say about Apple's multitasking direction. We should just bring Michael on. But yeah, I could probably spend a whole hour just like wondering what Apple is thinking in terms of multitasking in iPadOS. I think the basic problem is that it wasn't designed with multitasking in mind, and they've bolted it on throughout the years, and they've tried to do it in such a way where it won't confuse the casual user, and that's ended up just making something that isn't terribly useful. I mean, being able to do split view and side by side, slide over, things like that. It does have its uses, but it's kind of clunky and weird. And Stage Manager, I think, will be very good eventually, but they're going to have to work out the kinks, and maybe we can go back to the drawing board on some things.
So I'm a little surprised to hear you say that about them trying to bolt things on, and I'll play devil's advocate, and then you can shoot me down.
Sure.
But I feel like there have been some experimentations with how to do multitasking on the iPad, because you're right, it wasn't designed that way from the beginning, and it's a touch device. It is not a Mac, so you don't have obviously you can get the touchpad, or you can get a mouse, and you can get a keyboard, but that kind of is not where the iPad is supposed to play, at least according to your history. So I feel like these are experimentations that Apple's doing and saying, okay, let's try this one. Slide over, split view, those were okay, but just to your point, they aren't maybe for the casual user. The casual user either stumbles across them and then can't figure out how to get out of them, or just never discovers them in the first place. So I'm not ready. I personally am not ready to dismiss Stage Manager completely. I've played with it that much, and it's like, okay, this is something I've got to learn. It's not, but I also have not installed Ventura on a production machine yet. So I don't know how the two will compare, and whether it's a step in saying, okay, this is the way it works over here. This is the way it's going to work over here. And I'm sort of being double trained. Yeah.
So a few things to address there. Well, I do agree. I agree with you on Stage Manager. At this point, if someone were to ask, should I buy a high dollar iPad for Stage Manager, I would say no. Not at this point. I do think it will be very useful once the kinks are worked out, and it's not entirely on Apple's end. The developers have to adapt things themselves. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. And that is the problem when you start out with one thing and you change it into something else. There's a lot of things that have to be changed in the back end, things that did not have to be considered before that have to be considered now. And, one criticism I'll level at Apple, and this isn't entirely a bad thing, but Apple always likes to try to find a new way of doing things. They very famously did this with iCloud, right? Like they desperately tried to keep iCloud from becoming a file and folder file system, right? They wanted like one level deep, no deeper than that, no nested folders. They everything's sandboxed, and what they eventually did is come up with Files app, and basically come out with basically rebuilt the Finder, and so I think what often happens with Apple, they try to reinvent the wheel. And it turns out there's a reason the wheel is the way it is, So they kind of did that with multitasking on the iPad, and now with Stage Manager, it's much closer to the Mac paradigm. And my prediction is that Stage Manager will eventually, at least on the iPad, will evolve more and more into being more like the Mac. I think Apple will just give up. But interesting thing was I think it was Federici that said this the other day. Somebody asked him about a touchscreen Mac. He said, "Well, you never know," or something to that effect. And Apple's never said that before. Apple's always said that the Mac and the iPad are separate. Touchscreens don't make sense on a Mac. And now it sounds like Apple may be open to it. So, there may turn out to be a very good reason why the Mac and the iPad both have Stage Manager, even though a lot of people said it doesn't make sense on the Mac, but it would make sense if you're bridging the two, right? If you're going to build a bridge between the Mac and the iPad. So I don't know. I heard rumors a long time ago, and this is back when I first started hearing the rumors of Apple Silicon, or at the time it was Apple going to ARM, but they were working on something that would basically be also an iPad and a Mac all in one. And of course, this was years ago. So I mean, we've heard about the Apple Car for 10 years now. So nothing may ever come out of that. So take that with a very big grain of salt.
Josh is back in the next edition of Mac Voices to finish up his About an Hour With session, talking iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, his Take Control book about those subjects, and taking questions from our YouTube chat room. That's next time on Mac Voices. You'll definitely get something out of it. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.